All right. Thank you for joining us for Inside the Investigation. This is a part 2 to the James King murder cases. So up to this point, we did a part 1 last week that really focused on talking about the litigation when it comes to this, how something like this was able to happen. But then we had just started digging into the details of the crime against Lexi, and she was the second victim who was killed. And we talked to her sister. There was a hearing where he was not allowed out, but we digged into that a little bit, and we ended right around the time where we were talking about the victim and how many drinks. She had drinking 12 shots of Fireball up until this point and multiple cocktails that he was kind of giving her to kind of water her down until, he committed the crime and unfortunately took her life. But we sat down with the Virginia Beach Commonwealth's attorney and the deputy Commonwealth's attorney, the prosecutor on this case, and we're really talking about that. So listen in now for part 2. When you look back at that case, what was the most disturbing part of it for you?
The injuries to her body. So she had blunt force trauma injuries from her head all the way down through her pelvic area.
What is that? Punching?
Punching, striking, your body hitting a harder object. She had petechiae in her eyes, which is from the strangulation. Her neck was bruised underneath the skin. She had blunt force trauma to her breast area, her pelvic region. She had both external and internal genital injuries. The strangulation was from both strangulation and smothering. This took a long time. He hurt her for a long time. That's why it was premeditation.
Oh my goodness. And she was in handcuffs. Was that the first case or this one? Okay. So in previous situation, or the previous murder, it was eerily similar in a lot of ways. Met her at a wedding, takes her back, gets her intoxicated, and then, strangled her to death as well.
Correct. And both women were left visually the same way, lying, exposed, dying from strangulation and genital trauma.
Did you ever get the chance to talk to him throughout the process?
Oh, no, we cannot.
Did he take the stand?
He did not take the stand.
He did not take the stand. Okay. Who did you have go on to testify during that trial?
Oh, we had many witnesses. We had all our forensic evidence. We had all our crime scene technicians. Multiple police officers were involved. The bartender was involved. There was lots of evidence that we put forth.
And when you're trying a case like that, for you as the CA, what is your hope when you have something that big and that traumatic happen to a woman?
So one of the things that we have to say early on to victims' families is that we can't guarantee you a result, right? We can present the best possible case that we can, but we can't guarantee an outcome. One of the things that I know all of my attorneys take to heart is that we're fighting for justice in every single one of these cases, and the only way to do that is for us to prepare to the best of our ability, present the best case that we possibly can, and the family was very lucky to have a brilliant attorney like Tabitha Anderson and Janae Joslin prosecuting this case, both very experienced prosecutors who presented an excellent case here. And at the end of the day, that's all we can do, but we fight as much as we possibly can to ensure that we get a just outcome in these cases.
How much preparation went into before you took that day and started that trial?
Years.
Wow.
Years of preparation.
One of the things that I typically say to murder victims' families is we're going to get to know each other very well, because these are long processes, and that oftentimes can be traumatic to the families and victims themselves, in other types of cases because the court system is not fast. There's motions, there's scientific evidence that needs to be tested, and it can go on and on and on. But sometimes that's what it takes to ensure that we've, covered everything that we possibly can in the presentation of that case.
Do you remember the trial at all? Do you remember any moments that were, because whenever, as a reporter, when I'm covering a trial, I can pick up on the moments where it's kind of like you can hear a pin drop and everyone kind of like gasps, or it's just something that just maybe that the prosecutor says that just really hits home. You can see the reaction in the jurors. For you, were there any moments where that maybe happened, or any big moments that were like, you know what, I think that we're going to get the outcome we want with this case?
I think in this case, with the pictures shown side by side of the Virginia Beach homicide and the Ohio homicide, you really could hear a pin drop in the courtroom. They were so similar, it was so eerie, and there was a sort of a quiet awe just looking at those two women who had fallen to the same man.
And how do you, determine where this person falls on, an insanity situation, right? Or mental health problems being involved. Can you talk to me about how you kind of were able to rule that out, or how that went down?
So the court system is very good at going through the mental capacity issues or lack of issues of those charged with criminal offenses. There are lots of evaluations done, tests given, and there is a process. Insanity is an affirmative defense. So as the prosecution, we could not force him to do that. He had a very good defense team, and they went through all the mental health checks and balances, and they were satisfied that he was competent and that this did not involve any mental health defects. The Commonwealth was definitely satisfied. There was zero evidence of that.
And especially shown with some of the actions he took before turning himself in. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of check marks he did, before doing that?
Yeah, so he's on video for quite some time coming in and out of the hotel room. You see them walk in together, and then she just never comes back out. And you see him come in and out multiple times, smoking a cigarette. Sometimes he doesn't have a shirt on. He's going to his car. He's taking bags to his car. He's going back to the hotel room. Then he leaves. He went to the bank. He got some money. He got some coffee, and he wanted to smoke some cigarettes, and he just drove around, he said, because he knew he was going into custody.
Do you feel like there was a failure in the system when it came to this suspect?
So it's hard for me to say what happened in Ohio, but anytime we have a defendant who has murdered before and is able to get out and murder again, by definition, there's been a failure somewhere in the system, and it's extremely tragic for all the family members involved and all the victims involved that this person was on the street and able to do this.
Can you speak to just like what the family has said about the victim, what kind of person she was? And, I know that she had a big impact, on them. She
and her sister were very close. They said she was joyful and bubbly. She loved life. They gave us pictures of her wearing fun outfits, and she loved color, and she just loved her family.
Just think she just fell for the wrong person at that time?
Yeah, she unfortunately got into a relationship with somebody that turned out to misrepresent to her who he was. And he obviously took advantage of that.
I was about to say, did she know about his past?
Obviously, we did not know her.
At this point. Like nowadays, I'm quick to put a name.
Oh, yes.
I'm like, well, let me do a little Google search on you real quick because I trust nobody. But now, all these years later, so that conviction was what year?
Ours?
Yes.
Last year, 24.
So so a year later, he's up for parole. Can you explain the parole process and how that works?
Sure. So because of his age, and I believe he is 72 at this point, he falls into a category called eligible for geriatric parole because of his age. So even though he has served very little of his sentence, he is eligible to be considered for parole. Doesn't necessarily mean that the parole board is going to grant him parole, but he is up for consideration. And Virginia's approach to this, while I understand that what they're trying to do they're trying to give an opportunity to individuals who are of an elderly age the ability to get out of prison. And if we're talking about nonviolent offenders, I can certainly understand that. We're talking about an individual here who is a violent predator, who has violently attacked 3 women that we know of, killing 2 of them. He should never see the light of day again. Plain and simple, he should never be out of custody. There is nothing that he can say or do that could reassure the public that he's not a danger. And so the problem that we run into now is that the family, even though the trial's done, they receive justice, he's now up for geriatric parole review every year. And the family will have to go through this every year of saying, please don't release this violent individual. And so it only relives all of the trauma, relives all of the pain for the family, and essentially it means they just don't have any peace.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I didn't know that. So for the parole process, because you mentioned, so this date next week is to see if he would be up for it, and then there's a date after that where he would potentially or could be potentially released. Am I understanding that right?
So it's my understanding that next week they'll review whether he should be released or not. And I think that they can do a yes or a no. If they say no, I think they do have an option of deferring it for more than 1 year, but he is eligible for review on an annual basis after that deferral.
Okay.
So.
And this is something you've dealt with a lot then, I'm assuming.
So, we have families reach out to us just completely traumatized on a regular basis saying, I just got a letter from the parole board, they're considering possible parole. And not to paint the parole board in a bad light, they're doing their job. This is what they're required to do, is send the family notice saying they're eligible under the law, we want to notify you. But there's got to be a better way than making families relive all of this trauma over and over again on a yearly basis.
Because it's almost like, you don't want to go, but you don't want them to get out either. So it's like you want to make sure, you don't want to take that little chance, of protecting your peace and not going, and then maybe your testimony is what could have saved it, right?
And not everybody responds to these situations differently. So you can't sit there and say, this is the way to handle it. But speaking for myself, if I lost a loved one to a violent murder, I'd be at every hearing, every parole board inquiry, whatever, saying absolutely not. And so I know that the family in the King case very much is active, very much is doing everything they can to ensure that he is not released.
And just real quick, so it's after 70 or 72 that they have to do that they're given this eligibility?
There's different ages based on the amount of time that you have spent in custody. There's some reviews that can start as early as in your 60s based on the amount of time that you've served.
Okay. And then, we did mention a third woman. What can you all say about the 2018 assault conviction?
So all we can say is we put on every single bit of evidence that we had, and I was not involved in that case, but we also had 2 senior prosecutors in that case. We put on every single bit of evidence. The victim testified, and the jury came back with a verdict for simple assault.
And now, as everything is, the case is closed, but the parole every year, what kind of lessons do you want the community to take away from all of that transpired here?
Well, I think it's important to know that sometimes justice takes a very long time, but that there are multiple agencies working to make sure that justice is served. And it's a process. And we have to work within that system. We have to respect it. But it's also important to know that the community can have a voice. If they want to be heard on a particular case, or they want to be heard about the way things are, then they have especially today, everybody has an opportunity to be heard. And I think it's on all of us to make sure that we get justice for victims, especially of violent crime.
And I think the King case also demonstrates that justice is not a single moment in time where it's now delivered. Here is justice. Fighting for justice is an ongoing battle. And unfortunately, there are families that have to fight for it for years to ensure that not only do they get it, but they keep it.
So just the moment where you heard 2 life sentences, what went through your body? What went through your mind?
Well, of course, that's what we wanted. And of course, there didn't seem to be any other appropriate sentence. And yet, we still lost Lexi. So yes, this man is going to prison for the rest of his life, or should be. But we still have a woman who lost her life, another woman who lost her life, and another woman who was brutalized. So yes, a life sentence, of course it's satisfactory, but all of these things still come down to people have been brutalized. And so it's bittersweet.
And I love to ask this question just to wrap things up. Why do you guys do this every day? You're exposed to very traumatic situations. You're having to do hours and years of research. I'm sure that families can be unforgiving at times. What makes you wake up and do this?
So I'll start and I'll say this. Being a prosecutor is probably one of the most misunderstood roles in the public. Every day when we come to work, we fight to make our community a better place to live. Whether it is helping a victim's family, like in this case, fight to get justice, or whether it is helping individuals with drug addictions get the treatments that they need, or mental health problems get the treatment and counseling that they need. Every day a prosecutor goes home knowing that they've made their community a better place to live. It is a tough job. There is a lot of traumatic events that my attorneys and my support staff have to live on a daily basis. Tabitha will never forget this crime scene that she went out to. But that's who we are, is we're here to help people get through this process and to get justice. And that is extremely rewarding. It certainly makes me feel like I have done what I possibly can to make our community better.
Yeah, I could not have said it any better than that.
All right. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well.